Thanks, everybody. Sorry about that. Okay, it's just me today. So Heidi's not here. And yeah, we're working through some stuff today. So here, let me just double check to make sure the audio is working right. I think it is, right? Not muted anymore. Okay, are we good? Are we good? Perfect. Okay, yeah, so we have people setting up the energy now. It's just me today. Heidi's not here. And yeah, no, excited to be here today. So today, what we're about to go over is we're about to go over some chapter 2 stuff. We'll go over some timelines. We'll go over like when you can expect some stuff. I think I'm finally comfortable announcing the date. Basically, internally, what we were doing was we're debating 2 different dates. And I think we have the one that we want to go with now. It's like slightly later than I want, but we'll just say it. And then I don't know, who knows? Maybe we'll be like, F it, ship it like a little bit earlier. But what this date will allow us to do is allow us to get like a bit more polish out. We'll stick to it. We'll have some other stuff coming with it too. And oh yeah, if you guys are waiting on popcorn, I'll make sure that's getting done. I just pinged the community team. I've actually never put the popcorn down, so I don't even know how to do it myself. But yeah, Rag Poet or James or somebody will get it. We'll get there. We'll get there. See, everything breaks down when Heidi's not here a little bit. But, you know, Heidi needs to have some time off. She needs to enjoy her life a little bit. She'll be back next week. Don't worry. We're all about to start really ramping up. So, yeah, this AMA, essentially we'll go over some release dates. We'll go over expectations on what you can expect. We'll kind of give you an update on where we're at. And then we'll go on the whiteboard a little bit too. And I'll kind of talk about some of the longer terms of some of the longer term goals of Pixels, what we're working towards. And some of the next steps that we're doing too. So chapter 2, we got it out to farm hands last week. They started play testing it, and we started getting some feedback on chapter 2. There's a few things that we probably need to change based on their feedback, but overall I feel pretty good with where it's at, and I think we're ready to start moving it forward. The release date of chapter 2 that we're gonna be shooting for now, not shooting for, this is gonna be the date. We have to do it. We just absolutely have to do it. We're going to choose the date June 17th as the release date of chapter 2. It might be June 18th, June 17th or June 18th. That's basically going to give us like 2 or 3 weeks to polish it off. We're going to add a few other things with the release of chapter 2 as well too. Like I kind of want to make this a bigger thing. So we'll have some fun stuff when chapter 2 releases as well. We'll have like a few other things, like some events. We'll bring back either carnival or something like that, still TBD. But we're not going to release all the details of what's going on with that. But yeah, June 17th or 18th, expect that to be the chapter 2 release date. It's like 3 weeks from now. It's a little bit longer than I wanted, but it'll be in a much better spot. So essentially the state of chapter 2, where it's at right now, is that chapter 2, it's playable. There's a lot of stuff that feels right about it. It's the base of what we want to be building in the long term for this game that we have out. And what we're trying to get feedback on from the farm hands right now is basically, do we make changes that don't respect the progress that you guys have putting in? Are there changes that we made that don't feel fair to you guys? If there are, give us some time. We'll go fix them. And yeah, we'll figure that out. Also, I'll re-ping on the energy. I know a lot of people are asking about that in the chat. So just let me double check on what's going on with that. If not, maybe I can do it. I'll figure it out, surely. Here, I'll ping the channel really quickly. Okay, there's popcorn now. It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, appreciate whoever on the team did that. So yeah, chapter 2 release date, it's gonna be the 17th or 18th of June, 3 weeks out. And yeah, if you guys haven't gotten to take a look at it, we've previewed a bunch in these AMAs. But what we're about to start to do is we're also going to start to let content creators come into chapter 2 as well. So one of the things about Pixels in its current state, right, is you have to watch YouTube videos to learn how to play it. Chapter 2 is still going to be kind of similar, if I'm being completely honest. Like, we haven't invested a lot into onboarding yet. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to have content creators come in and help make content. So I think somebody else is facilitating this on the team right now. Essentially, if you're a content creator and you want to make content about chapter 2 before it releases, yeah, get in touch with us or fill out the forms. Yeah, we'll basically get you early access to chapter 2 so you can make tutorials, you can share all the alpha with your users, and you can essentially get like the scoop beforehand. So yeah, that's coming. Expect that. And yeah, sorry, I'm like doing like 20 things at once. And yeah, we'll give you guys early access. So in other news too, we released an update yesterday. If you guys are paying attention, we released guild shards, a big update to that. So guilds are going to be a core part of chapter 2, and how we go about releasing, or how we go about kind of pixels and missions at the very beginning. So maybe that's something we should talk about. In chapter 2, we're changing the way that you earn inside of pixels pretty significantly. Right now, if you go into pixels, there's like 3 buckets of players that earn inside of the game. We diagrammed this a bit before, but essentially we have one pool of pixel tokens that we give out every single month. It's the pixel ecosystem budget. So that's mirrored. That's annoying. Here, I think I can fix this. So yeah, we have the pixel ecosystem budget that's given out every single month. And essentially what we do is we give it out through the task board. And a lot of the work that we do is we decide who we want to give it to. So right now it's not super smart, right? The task board, there's essentially 3 buckets of users that we give it to. We give it to free to play, give it to VIP, and we give it to landowners. But there's not much more depth or nuance behind our token distribution than that right now. So this is how chapter 1 works. Now what's going to happen is there's actually be a lot of changes inside of these buckets. So essentially these buckets in chapter 2, they're going to look different. There's still the free to play bucket. There's still VIP. And there's still a landowner. Except now, there's going to be levels to it, if that makes sense. So every skill level will unlock new pixel. That you're able to turn in. So essentially what we're starting to do, and this is the direction that we're kind of going in, is we're adding more depth to all of our reward structures, and we're adding more, essentially it's getting more and more complicated every single time that we add updates into chapter 2. And this is a lot of the core tech that we're building out that I'll go over as well later. But essentially the key thing to note here is, we're adding in more rules inside of each of these buckets when it comes to the reward distribution. And the key thing to note is the further you go down the chain of tiers, or the further you level up, essentially, the more pixel you're going to be getting. So if you're a new player and you've just started playing the game for the first time, right now, truthfully, you probably won't earn much pixel inside of chapter 2. That's good and bad, right? That might be not so great if we're trying to get new users to stick into the side of the game. That might not be so great if we want, new users to feel like they have a chance. But also, truthfully, our take on this is like, yeah, new users probably need to put in the work before we let them earn a lot of tokens inside of the game, right? What this does is, one, this shifts more of the rewards to users who have played the game longer and who have progressed through the game. This gives new users something to work towards too. So it's not like they don't have anything to do. It's like, okay, if I actually progress through the game, then, finally I'll start earning more tokens. There is still a few token rewards at the very top of these tiers, or like the very beginning of progression, but the progression is going to matter a lot more inside of chapter 2. And it's interesting. We've been doing play testing with farm hands, and the progression is going to take a little bit to get used to. This is also why we want to start getting early access to creators and other people inside the community, so you guys all kind of get a good feel of what chapter 2 is going to look like. For example, here, I'm going to open up my spec on our preview environments. And we showed this before, right? And it freaked people out. You see that there's like a ton of mines on top of my spec. These are all tier 2 mines that I placed here. And at first it looks really different than the current game that you're playing, right? Because there's so many more of these things here on this land. And it's kind of upsetting to some people at the very beginning. But once you start to understand the tier system, once you start to understand that we're basically slowly increasing the content you get by levels. And the more levels that you get, the more valuable each of these tiers are, then it starts to make more sense. So when you first come into the game, when you start playing chapter 2, it's going to be slightly strange because you actually will have a lot more access to resources that you didn't used to have access to before. Like for example, here's my land that I built out where I have a lot of mines, except if you notice, I have a lot of tier 2 mines here. The tier 2 mines are actually still quite expensive. I only have a few tier 3 mines. I only have 2 tier 4 mines. So it changes as you progress through, right? Like these things, these tier 4 mines, the larger ones that we have here right now, they're not super easy to get. It takes a long time and they're a lot more rare. So the beginning of the tiers, it's going to feel like there's a lot of chances to get these low tier resources. That's kind of the point. The longer tier resources, the ones that are going to be turned in for more pixel, those are the ones that are harder to get. So yeah, that's kind of the difference that we're working towards essentially. So a lot of what this does too is it's going to change how you interact inside of the game. It's going to change how you are spending your time and energy, and it's a lot of differences here. So yeah, we have a lot coming here. So yeah, a lot of people have been asking about spec upgrades. We'll give some more updates on that. We've already leaked some of this stuff. The whole point with the progression system too is, if you notice here, I'll go back to my spec. My spec is fully upgraded on this account, so it's hard to show you, but I have upgraded this spec 5 or 6 times. So this is not the lowest tier spec, and I actually don't have any more upgrades available. But essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing 6 upgrades now. The first 3 will all be in coins, and then the next 3 will be in pixel. Now, the way that we've priced spec upgrades is we want to make sure that if you have been given and earning pixel tokens, it's enough to cover any upgrade, essentially. So the whole point of the pricing is, if you sell your pixel tokens and you want to upgrade, you might not be able to do both. You might have to make a decision on if you want to upgrade a spec or if you want to do whatever you want with your tokens, right? But we're trying to give you enough tokens in order to cover all of these upgrades. That's kind of the goal, right? So the whole point of what we're trying to work on now is we basically want to give you guys more reasons to use the tokens inside of the game. And we kind of want to make sure that you guys have enough tokens out of the ones that we give you to use them, right? So there's a few different things that we have when it comes to end goals here. In the longer run, we're working on monetization. We want to build an ecosystem that lasts and can actually stick around for a very long time, right? What we don't want to build is we aren't trying to build something that won't work. I personally don't want to waste my life and my valuable time working on something that I actually didn't think would be working in the long run. And in order to make something work inside of Web3, I really think that the fundamentals are what matter. So here, I can kind of whiteboard this really quickly because I think it's interesting. And just take a look at chapter 2, be in awe while I erase this whiteboard really quickly. Okay, so yeah, this goes into a larger conversation about ecosystem and how we view it too. So basically what I'm about to go and explain right now is how we view monetization, how we view revenue, and our long-term plans around that. So here, it's going to be easier if I move this screen really quickly. So we give out tokens, right? There's kind of 2 sides to tokenomics here. There's the tokens that we give out, and there's the tokens that we have getting used inside of the game. So there's kind of 2 pools here. There's tokens we give and tokens we collect. And I guess there's tokens sold. So really what our job is we want to get as many tokens as we can from you guys, from the ones that we give, right? Because the end goal of what we're trying to do is we're trying to grow the size of each of these pools. So Web3 is interesting because we actually have different end goals than a traditional company. Instead of trying to maximize profits like a company, where really what that is like individual value capture, So if we were a company, right, our only focus would be just on growing this pool, the tokens that we collect, right? Now in Web3, it's interesting because we're actually aligned in a different way than inside of Web2, where we want to grow the whole ecosystem. We want to grow every single part of the ecosystem. So it's tokens hold, tokens held, all of this. In Web2, you're focused on like a very narrow portion of value capture. Like they're trying to, Web2 companies are trying to maximize value capture. Here, we're trying to maximize ecosystem. So it's a little different with what our goals are. And I think the easiest way to explain this is it's the difference between maybe like a country, how it's valued versus how a company is valued, right? So a country, how it's valued is this term called GDP, right? Gross domestic product. And basically what that is, it's a measure of all of the consumption inside of an ecosystem or an economy. Like in economics, the equation is y equals c plus I plus g plus nx. I hope I got that right. It's been a little bit. That'd be really embarrassing if I didn't. But yeah, so this is the equation for GDP. Now, if we were to talk about the analogy or the thing that's analogous to like company value capture inside of Web2, you would basically just be looking at the G. So here's what all this means. GDP equals consumption plus investment plus government plus net exports. But essentially, if we were to do the same thing about, if we were to make the analogy between the Web3 and the Web2 company, tax revenue would be like a really good analogy to like what a Web2 value capture system looks like. Now, for us, we care about the whole pie. Like we care about everything going on in the ecosystem. So it's a different set of priorities. So essentially, the end goal of what we're trying to do is we want to give out tokens. We want to give you guys more reasons to use them. Every single time that you guys use tokens inside of the ecosystem, what this does for us is this gives out more tokens that we can give out. So basically, this circle expands. So if you guys use tokens inside of the game, we send them back to the tokens that we give. This pool grows, and it keeps getting bigger, right? And every single time that these pools get bigger, the ecosystem or the economy grows too. So essentially what we're trying to do is we're just trying to we just want to keep growing the ecosystem. So for this, all the work, ecosystem revenue does matter, because what ecosystem revenue does for us is it allows us to continue user acquisition and allows us to increase both pools. So that's why it's funny, because I'm talking to you guys about monetization a lot lately, and I don't feel weird about it because it's a different aligned metric than what a traditional Web2 gaming company would be going after, right? Like with Web2 gaming companies, really what they're just trying to do is they're trying to get as much money out of you as possible so they can basically make returns to shareholders. That's not what we're trying to do. That's not the focus here. The focus here is ecosystem growth, which we all partake in. So different attitude, different mindset, but it's really cool and interesting to think about. So that's why I'm so okay with being transparent about this and what we're kind of focused on. So chapter 2, what we're adding here is we're adding a whole system change, right? The whole point of releasing chapter 2 was we needed new systems inside of the game that, one, make the game make more sense, make the game more fun, and also truthfully make the game more able to monetize. So Web2 or Web3 economics are interesting because here, I can also go into this as well. The monetization model isn't so different from Web2. And a lot of what we've been thinking about is essentially how do you make play to earn work and what does it actually look like? So in Web2 gaming, it's interesting because I think the Web3 model is going to look a lot like the Web2 model in the long run. Is typically you have two types of users. There's like more depth and nuance when you get into all the users, but essentially you have normal players and you have spenders inside of the game. Web2 companies will pay money to get both types of users, and both types of users are very important inside of the game ecosystem. Spenders don't come into the game unless there's normal players. It's not a very fun game ecosystem unless there's other players inside of the ecosystem that also participate. Normal players don't help the Web2 company actually pay the lights, pay the bills. So there's this ratio that people try to figure out, like, okay, what's the right ratio of these kinds of players to these other types of players? And typically how it's been split inside of Web2 is there's about like 5% of the user base that are these spenders. About like 95% of these players are normal players. Now, what's interesting is Web2 companies have to pay user acquisition costs. Like they literally have to spend ad money to get both of these types of users, right? So Web2 companies are paying ads to acquire both. And there is money getting spent here regardless. Now with Web3 gaming, the question is, what if we didn't have to run ads? And what if instead we were able to directly distribute the user acquisition budget to our users to help us grow? And that's a lot of what Pixels has been working on and innovating. So the question is, if we instead go direct to consumer, we would be spending money on ads to reach these users anyways. Why can we not just directly reward them with tokens instead? That's the key question that we're asking. And that's what we've been working on. That's what we've been doing. And it's actually clearly been working in some capacity, right? We have grown to, I think, like 4 or 5 million users on $0 of ad spend. Pixels has not run any traditional ad. Pixels has only maybe spent like $10,000 in traditional user acquisition. And this wasn't even traditional. I think like $10 or $3,000 of that $10,000 was on a lawnmower. Like you guys all know the story, right? Essentially, we've been able to do this with direct to consumer rewards. And that's the innovation here. Okay, so then what is next for Pixels and like what are we working on? This all ties in, I promise. This all ties into the bigger picture of chapter 2, the next phases, what we're working on. I think it's good to talk about this stuff because one, Heidi's not here and I have to kill some time. And then two, I've been wanting to like go over this on the whiteboard setting with all of you for a while. And I promise I'll answer some game questions before we're over with this too. But yeah, here. So the next stages of what we're doing at Pixels. First goal is release chapter 2 because dear God, we need it. And it's coming finally, I swear. So June 17th, here's the timeline. And somebody will make much better notes of this AMA. Always appreciate it when it happens. June 17th. Chapter 2 releases. That's amazing. That's great. You guys have all been waiting for this. Now, in terms of next milestones, what are we working on besides chapter 2? There's still a lot of game updates that we need to be working on. So there's kind of a few different end goals here. It actually might be easiest to start with the end goal now. So June 17th, we release chapter 2. What's Pixels look like in 5 years though? So 5 years from now, let's say 2029. Yeah. What is Pixels doing then? At 2029, the goal and ambition for Pixels is we actually want to be taking away significant market share from Web2 gaming companies. If we pull off everything that we're trying to pull off between now and 5 years from now, Pixels should be at a spot where it's respected in the same likes as companies like Zynga or Scopely as a gaming company, right? Not just a Web3 gaming company, but we want to be significantly respected in terms of just gaming. And what we want to have done is we wanted to have innovated on these new user acquisition strategies that we were talking about, direct to consumer rewards, ecosystem growth, thinking about games in like a whole different way than they were thought of before to build out very competitive economics against Web2 gaming companies. So really what the goal is here is like, I'll throw out like wacky numbers, but it'd be like basically an ecosystem of games. And the revenue targets would be in the billions. and the users would be like tens and tens of millions, right? Like maybe like 50 million across everything that we're doing. The comparable there would be like, looking at a company like Scopely and seeing the success that they've had, right? They built a game, Monopoly Go. It did $2 billion of revenue in like 10 months. And that's the level that Web3 games need to be hitting in 5-10 years if they actually want to be legitimate game studios, right? So this is like that South Park diagram, right? Step 1, steal underwear. Step 3, profit. There's a lot to do in the meantime, and that's what we've been kind of working on right now at Pixels. So it's been interesting because there's kind of a transitionary period right now where Pixels has done a lot of things really well, and we've learned a lot of lessons. Now we have to figure out, how do we go from one game that has 1 million daily active addresses, probably like 700,000 real daily active users, that's monetizing all right. I think we're doing, in terms of like ecosystem revenue, millions a month, which is really good, but that's not hundreds of millions a month. And that's the level that we need to get to essentially. It's like, how do I 100x everything in this ecosystem? And what are the different moves that we need to be making in order to do that? So a lot of what we're thinking about is, one, laying a really good foundation. So chapter 2 is the first step of that. Now, a lot of what we're working on after that is continue to make our game as good as possible, and also thinking about the steps we can take to scale the ecosystem in different ways too. And what does scaling the ecosystem look like? What are the things we need to do to scale the ecosystem? And how do we put it all together? So the second step, I think, would be, if I'm talking about like high level business objectives rather than just like all the game stuff, which we'll get into that too today. I know a lot of people have questions about chapter 2. But it would essentially be building out, I've been calling it Project Neo. This is probably like realistically like an August, September thing. So the end effect to you will be better reward targeting. Project Neo, it's basically this internal project that we've been working on, and we're starting to hire for. We're hiring a chief revenue officer. This is probably going to be the most important hire that we make over the next year. We have a job posting for it on the official Pixels Twitter. If you know anybody and refer us, we'll pay like a pretty good referral fee. But yeah, essentially what they're coming in to do is they're going to be owning this new project. It's called Project Neo. Essentially, it's going to be our reward targeting system. So a lot of the work that we just talked about when it came to these user personas, rewards, earnings, all of this kind of stuff, if we actually want to level it up and get to the next stage of what we're doing, we need to essentially build out technology that can help us understand what happens when we give a reward to a given user. That's probably the most important thing that we've been building and working on so far, and the thing that we have the furthest advantage on inside of Web3. One very interesting thing about Pixels that we have that nobody else in the space has is we have an amazing data set on what happens when we give a user a reward. If you've noticed, we've been giving out variable rewards to users. Users earn different amounts in different days, right? And what we get to learn from all of this is we get to understand, what's that effect have on your users' retention? What does it have on their engagement? How much time they spend in the game? All of this kind of stuff. So now what we need to do is we essentially need to build out insights from this data. And that's what Project Neo has been on. So once we have that, there's two things that we get. We get to get a lot better insights on how to make chapter 2 better and make the gameplay better and better through this one game. It also gives us opportunities to build out other games inside of the ecosystem, because now we'll have a much better understanding of how to grow them as well through these methods that we've learned with chapter 2, with the Pixels game that we have now. So there's some exciting stuff going on there. This will probably happen in, I've been saying like 6 months. It's May now. So let's just say around like November. You're going to start to see more games from us. And we're already actually putting in the work on this now. We actually just started basically writing some GDDs, doing some of the groundwork for multiple games at Pixels. What it's going to look like initially is probably just mobile and casual games. We've been talking about this a little bit. This is like a part of the plan, essentially. Figure out unit economics inside of Web3 gaming. Figure out user acquisition strategies that nobody else has really played with. if they prove to be more efficient, then we have something there. The next thing is to kind of see if we can start to supercharge ecosystem growth horizontally. So that would be more games, and also improving the current game that we have as much as possible as well. The stage after that, and I think the biggest milestone, is if we do all this, the thing that I am most excited about, or like the thing that I'm really, really working towards in the next year, is one specific milestone. And that would be net ecosystem spend. And if we hit this in the next like 6 to 12 months, I think we've done an amazing job. I think that's when we kind of say, okay, we figured out some stuff about Web3. So let's say May 2025 is the date that we want to get that. But this is more of a milestone, right? And this is like a to be determined milestone. What we are working on right now is we're basically trying to figure out, if we give out rewards to users, are we eventually going to become profitable inside of the ecosystem? Essentially, are we going to be able to have enough rewards to start funneling rewards back? And how long does that cycle last? How much can we juice that? And how many users will that support, right? So if we can essentially get it to a spot where in 1 month, Pixels has collected more rewards from users than it has given out, that's the biggest unlock. I would say that's when we have basically, we can say with some confidence, we've figured out Web3 gaming user acquisition. We're not there yet. We still run at a deficit when it comes to, or we still kind of subsidize user acquisition spend, but we're not that far off. Essentially, if we want to get to net ecosystem spend, we need to increase spend inside of our ecosystem by like 3 to 4x, which if you've played the game right now, it is extremely unoptimized. We've done nothing with our onboarding flows. We've done nothing with retention. We've done no monetization, optimization. There's a lot of easy juice just inside of this game. We can probably 2 to 3x it with like some low-hanging fruit improvements. And then the next stage would essentially be, okay, seeing if we can expand it with more games, and these deeper insights that we have too. To get to this point, then it's really just basically fine-tuning and optimization for the next couple of years after that. And it's more of like it's a more mature growth stage. It's trying more games. It's putting more money into production. It's upping the experience that you get. And it's more of the not normal gaming play, but essentially it's putting more and more emphasis on production, game quality, and trying to release crazy hits, essentially. So that's a little bit about the master plan, what we're working on. Appreciate you going through that with all of us. And yeah, I guess I can step in and answer some more game questions because I'm sure there's a ton. Now, transparently, I'm only one person on this AMA today. I've not been starring questions, so I'll have to go through a bunch of them now. Honestly, let's just say if you've been asking questions, just re-ask them now, and I'll start answering a lot of them now. Okay, this is good. This is good. Lots of questions. Okay, how can I, so this is a question about a recent update that we made where you can now pledge guild shards. So pledging guild shards is not staking, but it's similar to the concept of staking, where now you have an option when you go to the guild UI here. Maybe I can even bring it up, to pledge your shards. You get to choose how many shards that you want to pledge to a guild, and it can be as many as you want. Now, the guild that you're pledging shards to might do some things, like they might be like, oh, we only give out certain memberships or certain privileges to people who pledge a certain amount of shards, right? It's really up to the guild to decide. This update around guilds was essentially giving them better tools to allow for permissioning. So here, if we come to my guild, let's see if I can open this up. You can see that I have a guild here. I have 28 shards in my own guild. if I choose to do it, I can pledge 14 shards to my own guild. I should have done that. Yeah, it's a shame. Nobody's pledged any shards to my guild. Honestly, it's not a good idea to do it. Don't do it. I'm probably not going to be super active here. But I've pledged 14 shards to my guild now. And what this does is if somebody else were to pledge shards to my guild, I could give them a role inside of my guild. So I could basically say, hey, people who have pledged 2 shards, I'm going to give them access to my guild land. They're going to be able to access guild resources. If you only pledged 1 shard, sorry, that's not enough to be a part of this guild. So yeah, there's some fun stuff here. So a change that we're about to make, and we know that some of you have made meme guilds. We actually really like the fact that you make meme guilds, so we don't want to ruin that. What we're going to let you do is we're going to let you pledge shards to a different guild if you are the guild owner. So if you made something like Pixels with Pat, I love this also. Then yeah, it's okay. You can still be a part of it. So yeah, we'll figure out what we do with these meme guilds because we really like this, and this has been something that hasn't been like super invested in. The guild's functionality, like what we probably need is we probably need some better metrics for you guys to see, like volume, all the other stuff here. We'll try to get that soon because it's been a pretty successful feature so far. There's like millions locked up in guilds right now, which is really cool to see that. And we think it's gonna be an even bigger part of chapter 2. It's also cool because yeah, there's been a lot of guilds that have been building out treasury too. TIFF is like maybe a 5-figure treasury now. I'm sure other guilds have something that's like kind of similar too. We'll invest more here. So yeah, this is getting fixed as well. I'll say. Can you say what tier industries we currently own will be in chapter 2? Here's what I can say. I don't think this will mess things up. What I will say is don't take advantage of this. What we're going to do is we're going to respect the progress that you guys have made in the game as much as possible. And what that means is since we're adding in different types of tiers inside of the game, we will make sure that you're not getting screwed and you get a little bit of a head start. So we might convert some things to tier 2. We might convert some things to like different items. Yeah, expect that essentially. So basically stuff that you already own, like we're going to default it to be most likely better in like almost all circumstances. Don't go and hoard a bunch of stuff because we're saying that because it might not work out in the way that you might want it to. We're trying to make it like basically break like about the same. So there are items in chapter 2, and we'll talk about this probably in next AMA. We'll give basically all the details on what these conversions look like in the next AMA and what you can also expect in the next AMA. There are some things that are going to stay basically as is. And it's interesting because chapter 2, it's changing the game and how it plays a lot, right? And as is might feel a little bit different than what it was before, right? So this is a lot of the work that we're doing with the farmhands right now and what we'll also be doing with content creators. So some things like apiaries, some things like grills, their utility will not be the same as it was. Well, it will be the same in chapter 2. And these things will be used in the task board, but it's going to feel a little bit different because it's not a part of this tiered system. So actually, the debate that we've been having, and I think we're actually leaning towards, incorporating a lot of this into the tiering because we were just going to leave it as is before, is we're going to start to do slow conversions of items like apiaries or grills into a tiered system also. I think what we've generally have leaned on is, for example, a coop is a good one, is if it's a NFT trait, will allow tier 1 and tier 2 coops to be purchased or like upgraded. And then we'll probably make it tier 4. They'll only be able to be the ones that are on the land, for example. And like we might do something similar with apiaries where like we might introduce a tier 1, a tier 2, apiary, and then like the 50 that are inside of the game are the highest tier. Those are the only ones you can get. So like there's debate internally on what we're doing with that. This has been part of the conversation that we were afraid of, and why we want to get basically players play testing immediately so we can get the feedback on this kind of stuff. Yeah, we'll try to respect this as much as possible. So will there be a different task board on own lands? So the task board, it's going to be the same task board everywhere, but the task board and the tasks are going to switch up significantly inside of chapter 2. Yeah, it's going to be a lot different. And there's hundreds of new tasks. So the task board right now, as is, like some of the tasks don't make sense inside of chapter 1, right? This was a decision that I made where we only had so many resources at the time, where I didn't want the chapter 2 date to release any later than it already was, right? So I basically had game design and all of our people just full time on chapter 2, with the acknowledgement that it was just going to be a little bit painful. But yeah, I think we found the right balance, and I think we figured it out. Oh, you can see some new stuff here. These are kind of leaks. Okay, sweet. So how many coins to upgrade the specs? It's still getting slightly adjusted. I think if you look at some of the farmhand leaks, you'll see how many coins we have set right now. Our goal with spec upgrades is, again, we want to make it a realistic amount of coins that you can earn by yourself without having to buy any. So it might be something we even adjust after chapter 2. Like if you feel like the spec upgrades are unaffordable and unachievable, that's a bad thing. And that's not what we want. We basically want to make it make sense for you to do it. And we want to make it feel realistic for a new user to be able to do it. Okay, any new updates on New Cyber? So New Cyber is going to stay in the game inside of chapter 2. What we're doing is we're creating a new skill called business, and it's going to be a combination of your previous skills. If you have leveled up business inside of New Cyber, the skill inside of New Cyber will be respected inside of this new business skill, and this business skill will also work inside of Pixels. So a lot of you have been leveling up business inside of New Cyber. Now this business skill, the work that you've done here, will actually also help you inside of Pixels, which is cool. There's actually going to be like cross support for that. So that's some of the news I can give around New Cyber. It's going to stay in the game. You'll still be able to level up the business skill that will actually also help you inside of Pixels. We're still trying to figure out like what exactly that looks like. I think we might start treating it more like mini game-ish. I think that's the most realistic compromise that we can make around New Cyber in the short term. In the long term, what we want to do is we want to open up the ecosystem a little bit more. But there's only so many resources that we can put in different places, right? So this is a good way to kind of, give New Cyber people who have been leveling it up some like cross skill stuff inside of Pixels. And yeah, we can update you guys more on what that looks like. Okay. Is there going to be pixel staking? So one of the things that we'll start to experiment with after we have chapter 2 out is different ways to use the token. It's interesting because I think one cool part about Web3 is that it maybe opens up new ways to monetize a game that don't necessarily look the same as Web2 monetization, where staking is a potentially interesting route. What I don't like is I don't like staking tokens to get passive return. That's a security. We are not ever going to mess with that kind of stuff. We don't like the idea of like passive income inside of the game. Like that's not a thing. You're playing a game. What we do like is we like the idea of, okay, if I stake these tokens, maybe when I'm playing, I get more. It's potentially interesting for anti-bot. It maybe attracts the right people inside the ecosystem too, but there needs to be an element of gameplay associated with it. So I think we'll do that. We just have to figure out when we put that in, basically. As a way of earning for the game, why not accept ads and place it in the game or special items sponsored by other companies as ads? This is probably coming soon. I think we'll do the first one with someone that you all know and love. So yeah, that'll be an exciting partnership. We just have to make it happen. We've been a little distracted. Is it really important for players to join a guild in chapter 2? What I will say is you will be able to earn the pixel token without doing it. But if you are the type of player that wants to maximize the experience and maybe also maximize the earnings, like if that's the thing that's driving you, it probably will be beneficial to join a guild, because a lot of the highest tier resources that are going to be turned in for the most amount of pixel are only going to be available on land, and the guild will help you get access to that, right? So we'll start tweaking this and figuring out like what the right ratio of all of this is. This is a lot of the learnings that we'll be doing too. Again, it's like kind of that balancing of free to play players versus not free to play. I think what's interesting too is there actually in Web3 gaming, there might be a third bucket of users like in between. What it might be is like it might be a spectrum inside of Web3 gaming. And this is just like an interesting thought I'm literally having now. But there might be a spectrum of spend inside of the game that you kind of cater towards because we give you tokens, right? It's not quite the same as you like using your credit card to spend money inside of the game, right? Like we gave you these tokens and they're yours to do whatever you want with them. But also it'd be pretty cool if you actually use them in the game from time to time too, right? And that's kind of the point of us giving you some tokens sometimes too. Like hopefully it's enough to cover joining a guild, upgrading your spec. And if you want to do that, then you can do that with some of the tokens that we gave you. But yeah, everybody has different ways that they want to play the game. Some people don't want to join a guild. And what I will say is the first focus of chapter 2 and what we thought about was around guilds, but it's not going to be the long term. And there's going to be other things that you can do. I think when we release chapter 2, we're also thinking about some other mini game things that we want to get out. Like we want to make it fun, kind of like when we first moved the Ronin. Like we want it to be like a party, right? So we'll do some stuff like that. Why not IP ban bots? Scared to lose DAU. So we actually do a ton of bot detection, banning, and ban waves. What I will say is IP bans worked 15, 20 years ago. They don't work anymore. A lot of bots are a lot more sophisticated and complicated than that now. And we do detection that allows us to block bots, but it's so much more complicated than the IP ban is what I can say. There's like a lot of other stuff that we have to look at to do that. And that's been a lot of what we've been working on. It's like, okay, when we ban bots, how do we make it so they aren't able to create accounts again? Not so easy. And there's stuff that we're doing there. And then the other part too is like, we're trying to just figure out the like time to ban bots. We want to get that down. And we're doing some tweaks to reputation. You're going to see when we release chapter 2, we just talked about it today in the team. We're going to do something funny that I think will really put a like pretty big hit into them. It's almost like a CAPTCHA, but not. Good questions. How many soil is available in the max level spec? As many as you can fit, but only up to tier 2 soil. So, if I take you back to Heidi, this is Heidi's spec, right? So one of the things in the playtesting that hasn't been so obvious to people is there's different tiers of soil. I think what we're trying to figure out is how we change this art. If you guys have any opinions on this, let us know. But not only are there tiers of like mines and things like this, there's also tiers of soil. So you can't plant the high tier crops on tier 1 soil. You have to upgrade the soil also. So specs can only get up to tier 2 soil. If you want to plant tier 3 and tier 4 plants, which I will say, it takes a long time to be able to get to plant these plants. Tier 1 is like level 0 through 10 or 1 through 10. Tier 2 is like 10 to 20. I think you don't start to get to plant tier 3 until you're like level 30, which is, if you guys have been playing the game, it takes a while, right? Will there be an event like a spec land and decoration contest? Yeah. So as we start to like get closer to chapter 2, we're going to start to like ramp up the excitement levels and the hype levels. We'll do some stuff like this. I think we'll probably start the campaign in the next week or so. But yeah, we'll do some fun stuff here. Don't go the Niantic route where they neglect their main game and release too many other games that are inferior and lose all around. Totally agree with this. I think like the thing that we have right now, it's like lightning in a bottle a little bit, right? Like it's captured a lot of attention inside of Web3. A lot of you love it, which is amazing. And it's like my baby too. I've been working on this for so long. I want to see this go as far as it can. And we're not neglecting this. Like a lot of the other stuff that we're working on, it's like essentially not taking time from the team, if that makes sense. It's like we have more stuff to play around with than we did before previously, right? So like the foundation can put like a little bit of resources into certain areas if it chooses to do so. Like if it wants to fund the development of like a few other games for its ecosystem, the foundation has the treasury to do so now, right? So the foundation's kind of doing something separate than like what we're doing here when it comes to building out the Pixels game. We can't even get XPs on our low level industry because of the bots. They have this long range automatic farm. We can't even get it. So yeah, what I will say is we just implemented something. I can't say too much, but yeah, what I will say right now is like if you are using something that is considered unfair or like a cheat, you guys know what it is. Don't be surprised if you get banned from it. Like don't come crying to me because you used one of these long range auto clickers thinking you wouldn't get caught. Why some of you do this on your like actual accounts that you've worked on for a long time baffles me. But like, yeah, we're gonna know if you have been using these. We're introducing more anti-cheat, so yeah, don't use those cheats as well. Say. So tree hunting going to stay broken. Do the cheaters until chapter 2? Truthfully, most likely there's not much that we can. Well, we're introducing something new as well. Say the trackers. There's not much we can do about those. This long range hacks. Don't do it. And if you do, don't cry to me if you get banned. VIP ticket price won't go up in chapter 2. No, the price will stay the same. How to get a spec in chapter 2. Everybody gets a spec. We're reintroducing that system. So you'll basically, you might have to redo the tutorials in chapter 2. You'll get like placed on your own spec. Barney will tell you how to use it. Your current specs will stay the same if you have one, so you won't lose anything there. The default one is bigger than the one that you currently have now. And yeah, it'll stay the same. Will there be another token in Pixels? No, not for a very long time. I will say if there's anything that we do, we've been like considering helping other games with their go-to-market strategy. This is wildly speculative. This is like not something that we've confirmed and like not something I'm sure if we want to do or not. In that scenario, what we would likely do is some kind of token swap where that game still has their own token. The foundation invests in that game slightly using the pixel token. And I mean, yeah, that's like something that's maybe interesting. But it would only make sense with like the right partners. So yeah, don't look too much into that statement. Will there what pixel syncs will there be in chapter 2? So like some of the spec upgrades. There's gonna be like normal MMO stuff too that we're introducing. Like for example, backpack upgrades, like normal things there. And yeah, we're bringing on people to help us basically figure out some things that make sense too. Monetization is an interesting thing because what we don't want is we don't want to be pay to win. We don't want to piss anybody off. One of the things that we're trying to be very careful on is if we're introducing monetization, we cannot be taking away anything from you guys. So like we will not do anything like shrink the backpacks, then charge more to get the back to the same size. Like, yeah, we'll be very careful around all of this. Okay, sweet. Just time for like a couple more questions. Are you going to open up the carnival in chapter 2? Do you guys want to see us open up the carnival in chapter 2? It's been highly requested. I think it could be fun. If we get enough people asking for it, maybe we will. Okay, I'm gonna pull up one more question. Okay, what about pets? Yeah, so I think we're ready to do a new pets mint soon. What I didn't want to do is I didn't want to get too many pets out and then have this NFT collection that we have responsibility for, and like a ton of people asking like when utility, because we had to get chapter 2 out and it took a little bit longer than we thought. The next focus around gameplay is going to be around contestable lands, and I think we want to try to do some stuff with pets too. One of the other apps or games that we're working on right now too is going to be around pets as well, and that IP. Yeah, we think it's like a pretty cool IP to build off of in the long run too. So we started work on that. We'll probably have like some stuff that we can show not too long from now on what that might look like, but it's going to be in like a prototypey stage for a few months. We're in a cool spot with ecosystem development right now where we can plant some seeds that are going to grow in like 6 months to a year and then still continue to build out the core stuff that we're working on. So yeah, I'm trying to just basically figure out how we can scale the ecosystem, build something in the long run, and build something that's going to last and be a bit different than what's come in the space before. And with that, thanks everybody for this AMA. I hope you guys liked this format. It'll probably be a lot different next week when Heidi's back. But yeah, I appreciate you all being here, and I think I'm going to end it here. Thanks, everybody.